Welcome, everyone. I'm very happy to have you all here today. I'm very grateful that you're joining the webinar, spending some time with me. Today, I want to talk about validation simplified. So I want to share with you the idea of how smart comparisons deliver flake-less results. I am Diego Molina. I am the lead of the Selenium project, and I am also a senior field solutions engineer here at Sauce Labs. I want to share with you a different way of thinking about software validation and release confidence today. We will follow through the webinar the idea of how a team could modify the checkout as a feature in an e-commerce, and then we will see how this feature is moving from the beginning, design, implementation, validation, and on the way to the end in a way that we have an intent that started with the idea of improving something that exists in the application all the way to the end, or in a way that we are validating that intent through the different tools we offer here at SOS. So let's get started. I want to pose a question in your head right now, and it's, if all your automated tests pass today, would you release? I've thought about that. And also remember that automation has been evolving and has been maturing year after year. And when the different tools are well plugged together, pipelines are getting faster and more robust every single day. And I guess you have all seen that even AI can generate all these tests for you today. But I still see with customers and with some folks in the community that people hesitate a bit before doing the final deploy, because there is still the idea that even though all my tests pass, I want to know what my customer, what my end user is experiencing when they use my application. So testing as an industry, as a profession, has continuously evolved as software has evolved. And that's why manual testing at the beginning relied entirely on human observation. And that's why all these activities, manual testing, exploratory testing, are so important today, still in the age of AI. And functional automation improved dramatically the confidence in the way we do releases and in the way we shape the behavior of the application. But the thing is that since the web has evolved so much, these modern applications require more than just like clicking here and there, and also verifying that all the API responses and all the posts work well. So today, we see very often different layout issues, not only on the website, but sometimes in the PDF that was generated, sometimes in the email that was sent. Sometimes they miss the content. There is still sometimes you see the variable being output instead of the content. Sometimes there is branding that changes, and then you see one branding here, the other branding in a different place of the application. And sometimes there are like rendering problems. But that's why I believe that visual validation is complementing this functional testing by helping us understand what the user is actually experiencing. And this is one of the key values that Sauce Labs is offering to all the community and all our customers. You can go further ahead, further away. You can get more value from just doing functional testing by adding visual validation on top of it. So, maybe let's stop talking here, and instead of talking about this conceptually, let's see how this looks if we think about the feature I mentioned a moment ago. So let's think about a checkout. We have a website called Source Demo, and it has been doing extremely well in the last years. And we have been thinking about improving the checkout to make it easier and sometimes more challenging for testers to play with it. But the idea is that we want to enrich the checkout. So we will go through this feature, and we want to share with you how you could validate how these changes should be checked and validated through every single stage of the development. Usually, everything starts as a design. And then you reuse these components. It becomes a web experience. It becomes a mobile experience. And it also generates sometimes like PDFs or emails. So all these things are embedded into a single feature change in a whole platform. So today, for example, in my checkout feature, what I have is functional tests. And they work pretty well because in my case, I'm aware that most of my users come through Google Chrome, through Safari, and there is not a big percentage, but there is a percentage that drives revenue to my website through Firefox. So I consider those three, and then I run functional tests, and they're pretty stable because I control the website end to end, and I know what is going on, right? The thing is that today, and you might think that I'm taking this example, that it might be a bit exaggerated, but I have seen this in the community, and I have seen this in different customers as well. Even though they control the whole application, they understand what is going on, they want to test and verify every single part of it. So they do extremely detailed checks. So they check, like, for example, that the price is exactly that one. They validate that the text is exactly that one. And this, to some extent, works well, especially when the web was evolving slowly. But today, when we have so many different ways of rendering content, when we have so many different ways of building applications, when we have so many different ways of validating an application, not only at the browser level, but also at different levels earlier in the process, this type of tests becomes brittle because any change on the website or the mobile application could affect the test. And when the test is affected, it starts to fail, it gets brittle or sometimes flaky. And that's how we lose confidence in automation. You know, if we add visual to this type of tests, we can make it less verbose, easier to understand, and we should only care about the flow that our customer, our end user is going through. In this case, I'm just making sure I'm navigating properly to the website, and on every step, I'm doing a visual check. There are many ways to implement this visual check, but I can do it as verbose as I need, or I can do things like excluding elements from the website. But what I want to share with you here is that a test can become much easier to understand and to write when you have a safety net at the end that is giving you the confidence to release through a visual check. So in the end, this would look like that. If I go to my source.ui, and then I can see how all the tests are playing around, since I have these tests running in different browsers and in different platforms. What I'm doing here is basically making sure that it works in different environments. And once I'm sure that this works well, I just go back and I'm sure that this is like, I'm establishing a baseline here. And after that, I'm going to say that every single screenshot that I took as a baseline is the one I'm going to use from now on. So this is already giving me confidence in the sense that even though the website might change and my functional test still works, I'm having an extra safety net that is validating for me that intent, that the experience the user is getting at the end is still working. The key here is that functional automation is actually performing as we expected. It's doing a good job. And every assertion is working and passing successfully. The thing is that sometimes users perceive errors that cannot be perceived through functional automation. And, because it's just like that, like functional automation reflects the application behavior, but visual validation is verifying the user experience. And I'm not saying that you should do one or the other one. I'm just saying here that they complement each other really well. So let's think about the rest of the world, like, for example, a mobile device. Let's see how that looks there. If you have a given viewport in a browser, then you need to think also how this would look like in a mobile device. And this is the same checkout feature. And the platform changed, but the user expectation has not changed. They still want to see an application working and also being easy to use. So here, the functional automation is still validating the behavior, but then visual validation is becoming even stronger because it's validating the experience of the user in a complete different platform, and you are still following the same process. One key thing here is that this is giving you confidence, and you are able to follow how the feature is evolving through different platforms and through its life cycle, not just the framework you're using to run your tests. So how would this look in a mobile device, right? If you run this in our real cloud, you would see that the workflow is very similar because you wrote a web application that can render properly in a mobile device. It doesn't matter if you have like a foldable phone like the one on the left, or maybe if you have like a regular iPhone like the one on the right. The experience is just the same one for the user, and they're getting a really good experience in the end. And this is just a functional test, right? As I was mentioning a moment ago, if we also move to the visual validation, what happens here is that we're now extending the amount of baselines we have to do the validation and to have something as a source of truth for the future. So in this case, I'm using different Google Pixel devices, I'm using different iPhone devices. And what was happening here is that I'm now evaluating how every single thing looks like in these new platforms and in these new devices. So in addition to the confidence the functional test is giving me, I'm now adding an additional level of confidence to the visual test. And I am now really set for success because I am validating the base changes that I have in my platform, the regular user workflows, and I am now ready to start working on improving my checkout. So it's important to understand what the difference is and how they complement each other in terms of the traditional functional UI automation and also the visual validation. One common question I get in meetups, in conferences, and sometimes just like in the Selenium Slack workspace, some people come to us and they ask how they can move from being manual testers, exploratory testers, to also become automators and drive code. And one of the complex things is that when you're doing manual testing, you have a checklist, you have a list of things that you have to verify that it's working in detail. And one of the major issues I see is that we try to translate every single item from the manual test. We try to make it look like an assertion, right? So we will see out there in the community, in different customers, I've seen this as well, that there are way too many validations. And this is a good point to start because it's really good to understand what the test is doing. But eventually, as we evolve and become more experts in this field, we will understand that having way too many validations is really hard to maintain. And what we want to do in the end is just validate the intent instead of just, validating the implementation, how the website was done, how the mobile application was done. We simply want to validate that my intent as a developer, as a product manager, as someone who's making changes in the application is actually reflecting how I want the end user, how I want my customer to see the changes in the app. So in practice, on the left side, every additional assertion is just another maintenance point. But when we add visual validation, this is just shifting the focus from the details of the implementation to validating the intent that we have to deliver to the end user as an experience. So far, we have seen the checkout working at the top layer, in a browser, in a mobile device. But what happens if we want to start earlier in the process? What happens if we just don't want to wait until all the way to the end, until we have like a deployed application, until we have, a mobile app ready to be tested? So let's rewind a bit. A great user experience starts even before the first line of code of automation begins. Even before there is like a web application, even before there is a mobile application, before many things, there is a design. There is a design of someone who sits down and thinks, how could the user experience a better moment, a better wow moment with application, right? So let's have a look at how people do this normally in Figma. So in Figma, we have our designs, how our application is going to look, and we can already start validating this very early in the process. We can put the Sauce Labs Figma plugin in our Figma app, and we can start configuring how this would look like in the visual validation segment. So we can create the different snapshot names, the test names, the suit names, so we can add metadata to this component in a way that I can identify it for future checks as well. So after configuring every single thing, I can just go back and then say, this component that is very relevant for my new feature, please send it over to Sauce Labs because I want to have a base image as a reference that I can use in the future to track my changes and validate the intent I'm trying to deliver to my customer, to my end user. So in this case, I have a build that I just called Figma build. And what I'm saying here is, okay, I'm establishing a baseline for this change that I want to do. So this is the base, this is my current status of the checkout, and this is how things work here. So when we make changes in Figma, what comes usually as a next step is to code that change, right? In this moment, we're like, we have the design, we have approved the design, and most of the time what happens is that when we have a visual issue, it's not really a functional bug, but it's something that looks different because they are small implementation differences that are introduced during the development. Because, someone was sitting down with Figma, making the changes, proposing these changes, and then they move to a next stage where, the message might get lost and the implementation looks different. And these small differences over the life cycle that we use to develop applications can end up in a bad user experience. So Source Visual, what tries to do here is to meet you where you are. Be at the place where they're working right now to give you a hand and let you validate all these changes across the life cycle. So in this case, let's imagine that I want to work in my feature. Selfdemo.com is doing extremely well. And right now, I want to add more changes to it. I want to make it, we're growing to different countries. So we want to add a country field. We want to add an email address. We want to add a phone number because we really want to deliver all the items that people buy there. So what we're doing here is that all these changes, we want to validate them against our baseline. So in the same way I was doing that before, in Figma, I could just load the Source Labs plugin. I can make sure that all the data is correct. I can double check that the metadata is there. And afterwards, I can go and synchronize the design with Source Labs to have a really good end result, which is seeing that there is a new build of my Figma designs. And then I can see at the design level, we haven't done any coding yet. We have just done the design, and I can already see the differences between the existing design and the new one that will happen. So this person who's driving the mouse right now could be a designer, It could be like the PM saying, okay, this new design looks good. This is my way of approving it by setting a new baseline. And this is how we have thought about this product, like in a way that Source Visual can also help you move your workflow faster, have proper evidence of who's approving that, who is moving that forward, and so on. So at this point, we have thought about this new feature. And since someone approved it, let's say the PM says that this looks good, or maybe the design guild got together and they said, this is looking good. We're going to move forward to the next step. The next step is usually, developing the component that will look like exactly the design that was changed. So most of the time when we're developing a web application or when we're developing a hybrid mobile application, we spend a lot of time working with components rather than the complete application. So this is usually where Storybook fits really well. And there are components or there are tools that are similar to them. And we start implementing that design change in Storybook like there. So one key step here is to also validate the changes in the component even before, building the application. So because every validated component contributes to a more reliable application. And that's also what Source Visual wants to do for you. We want to give you a hand there. We want to be where you're working and help you with the validation that will be done when the changes are done in Storybook. So we're now moving forward slightly in the software development lifecycle. So let's see how that actually looks. So this is my Storybook where I have all the different items that are part of my Source Labs Source Demo website. And here I have the buttons. And here I have how I show the products, but more specifically, here is where I have the checkout page. And I can see all the different items that I have there. So I have the 3 fields, and now the next step is to implement the any fields. So here, one of the cool things is that I have executed all my tests that are based with Source Visual, and then I end up with a build that is only focused on Storybook in visual inside Source Labs. So I can see all the different items that I had in Storybook. All of them are part of the baselines that I'm establishing, and I can go over them one by one, checking that everything is correct, that everything looks good. And in that sense, I'm already establishing a second level, a second layer of confidence in this process. So I already validated Figma. I'm now validating Storybook. So I'm now in a state where I am not allowing the process to introduce noise into the changes I want to deliver to my end user. I want my end user to, experience a really good application, to enjoy the application. And with these validations in every single phase, I'm helping the whole process, the whole company, my team, to deliver value by avoiding the inclusion of noise in this process. So far I've made changes here that are affecting the UI. But one important thing is that the experience doesn't end when the user clicks or taps and pays. There are more things to do there. And usually the user gets maybe an email or maybe downloads a PDF with a result. And this looks just like this. So this is just an automated test that will go to the new version of Source Demo and will go through the checkout process. It will select an article. It will put it into the checkout. But we have added a feature that lets the user print their, in a PDF, print information of their form, so they have it ready and they can use it at the moment where they, when they receive the package, or maybe they want to claim something. So some people just want to have the PDF ready in case something is needed as a proof of purchase. So in this case, we have this button that is there with the generate PDF order. And the next thing that we do is that we are validating how that PDF looks like, because we also want to make sure that the experience is complete end to end. So in this case, we have an order receipt with all the data, and over the iteration of the product, when we add more fields, we're going to have a PDF that have more fields, and we will be able to also make sure that we are validating the design in Figma, that we're validating the design in Storybook, that we're validating the changes in the application through the functional tests we have and the visual tests that we implemented. But at the end, we're also validating the end experience of the user through the PDF that we're generating to them. So we're getting close to the end, but I want to leave a thought with you. You know that AI is dramatically reducing the effort that will require to create an automated test, right? And as many evolutions, I think this is a positive one for software development. However, more and more tests don't mean that we automatically have more confidence, right? Because AI can verify the automation, execute it successfully, and we're working really hard here at Sauce Labs to provide you the best tool for that with Sauce AI for authoring. And we're also recommending several customers based after seeing on the use cases that it's a really good match. It's like the story of better together. AI generating your tests works well. And when you need that extra pinch of confidence, you can add also visual validation to it. Because even though the functional test works, you can have this extra safety net of having the visual validation that will help you get complete confidence. So I think the mix of functional automation, AI, and visual are really complementing each other in a nice way that are helping us to have, all this confidence that we need to go through this release process. So let's bring everything together. We have followed all the checkout and see how this works together. So in the end, what I have walked with you today is a way that changes are not done in the application itself from the first moment. There are different ways of validating the changes that are happening to an important application. So you start always with the design, and you want to at some point validate that. If you're using Figma, we can meet you where you are. We can help you have traceability of the changes that are happening in your base designs and when they get implemented into Storybook. Rather than using different tools to review different processes on every single tool, we offer you like a single tool, a single platform where you can validate every visual experience. Because right after you validate Storybook, then you can just start validating how it looks on the web, how it looks on mobile, because we offer the first class platform, super secure, to run your web test and mobile as well. And if your industry requires you to understand how those documents are generated, if you want to validate them as well, combine them with our PDF validation as well. And if you're also starting to generate tests with AI, and you are like wondering how you could get that extra mile, extra kilometer of, release tranquility, let's call it like that, you can always use Source Visual to get that level of confidence there. So that's what I wanted to show you today. I wanted to show how Source Labs can be the place for you, a single platform in a single workflow and a single source of confidence for you to have like plenty of like release confidence every single time to make a change to the application all your customers use. So in the end, the thought I want to leave you all is that many approaches complement each other. In this sense, functional testing is great. It tells you if the application is behaving well. But with all the code changes that we're having every single day, we need an extra layer of validation that is visual. So this means if the user is actually having the experience we want them to have. And in the end, the mix of those two is giving us the confidence to confidently release whenever we want. So thank you for being here and looking forward to see you in the next webinar. Thank you.